Welcome to the Voices of a Black Man. My name is CK James, and today I have the pleasure of talking with none other than Terence Oliver. The Voices of a Black Man is a platform that realized that in today's times, Black men were being put into two boxes. One, silent, meaning absent, or two, angry, meaning aggressive. The narrative of the Black man was being spoken all over social media and other media platforms, but one thing was missing: the Black man, to tell his story through his lens. We've heard it from everybody else about who the Black man is, where they come from, their dreams, their aspirations, their backgrounds, their education levels, but we never heard it from the Black man. The Voices of a Black Man is the platform to do just that. Have him tell his story through his lens, hopefully showcasing to society that all Black men do not fit in a box. They come from various Black backgrounds, have experiences that are varied, dreams and aspirations that are quite different. More importantly, they are human and men who happen to be Black. Thank you for joining us again today, and I would like to introduce Mr. Terence Oliver. Terence, are you there?
Yes, hello.
How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having a conversation with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just jump right in here. The first question is to tell us about younger Terence Oliver. Where did he grow up? Where is he from?
Okay, so that's a little bit of a long story because it had ebb and flows to it. First of all, from my earliest remembrance, we were actually had a house when I was born, and so my family was doing okay, I guess, and we're eight children, and so I call myself number 7 because my mom had a miscarriage before me, so I call myself number 7, even though in the scheme of things I'm number 6. When you look at my other siblings, I have 4 older brothers, and I have 2 younger sisters. And so, 2 younger sisters and 1 older sister.
Wow.
There's
So now,
5 boys and 3 girls.
oh, wow. That was a rowdy house, I bet.
Yeah.
How far apart from the oldest to the youngest?
How far apart? It's about from the oldest to the youngest. I never thought about that. That's from 1950 to 1966 is the youngest was born in 66. I was born in 61.
Okay. Wow. Now, where it was in the United States? Was it in a different country? Where were you born?
Yeah, so we were in Cleveland, Ohio, and as I was saying, we had a house, but life turned around a little bit when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, because my parents actually split up, and so that kind of changed things, the narrative of how my life went. And so after that, after our parents split, we wound up actually in the projects of Cleveland. Tough place to grow up. So I was out on the streets doing a lot of stuff, and learning a lot. And as a matter of fact, in our building, every house had probably about 7 or 8 kids, and there was, I think, 6 different families, and so it was kind of tough there. After that transition, one of my brothers went to college to Ferris State, which actually happened to be the first college that I went to, following in his footsteps. But he was able to help the family and help us transition out of the projects. And so, actually in the 10th grade, we moved to the east side of Cleveland over by Superior Avenue. And that's kind of the, as far as the logistics are concerned.
Yeah. How old were you when your parents split?
I had to be maybe 6 or 7, somewhere around that age.
Wow, wow. So now, what were your hobbies, interests?
Well, I had a lot of hobbies. I was a pretty rambunctious kid, or however you want to call it. I was into a lot of stuff, doing a lot of things with my hands, going around, messing with everything, breaking everything. And it kind of translates into what I do now as far as like doing things with my hands now, except for I fix a lot of stuff. But actually, um, I did um, a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think here. What's the main question of that? I'm kind of lost in the question.
Hobbies or interests?
Oh, okay, yeah, hobbies or interests. So I did a lot of drawing and stuff like that, a little bit of singing, and so actually the narrative of my life kind of goes from me sketching and getting noticed with my sketches and things like that, and then also I wound up singing, and so a lot of my years in my 20s and 30s, I was doing a lot of things with my hands and also singing on the road and doing things like that. And so the early years kind of led up to what I did later, of course.
Got you, got you. So now, influences growing up.
I had quite a few influences. I mean, of course, when the rougher parts of my life, I had bad influences, of course, but I had good influences as well. One thing that I can remember too, one thing that motivated me too was when I was in what we call junior high school, which is now they call middle school. We had an opportunity where they called us to an assembly. And so when they call all the kids to an assembly and you don't know what's going on, and most of the kids are just like, oh no, another speaker or whatever. And so I had to be maybe 13, 14 years old. And we get in there and, kids are all looking around, wondering what's going on. And Muhammad Ali walks out on the stage. And so it was just so powerful because he was in Cleveland to fight Joe Wepner. And it was a big motivation for me just to see somebody who was so popular around the world and that kind of thing. But close to home, I had some good influences in the way of my uncle, who was a pastor, and my aunt. And as a matter of fact, they used to have us go to their house on the weekends, and and we went to church with them. And so that was a really positive influence in my life because it helped me, when there are distractions and opportunities to do things that, may not have been so good. It helped me to focus, and it kind of grounded me for who I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one quick question about your parents now. When they split, did you build a relationship with your mom and with your dad? I'm assuming you went with your mom, but I don't want to make that assumption.
Right. Yeah, we went with our mom, and so and my mom is very sweet, very gentle, very nurturing, and that kind of thing. And so I had that influence, and so I believe that helps me to be someone who is forgiving and really think of the best for people and that kind of thing because I was nurtured by her. My dad was a little bit. He was in our life. He would come over, but he wasn't as close. As a matter of fact, back then, a lot of the parents weren't as much in kids' lives as they are now, it seems. But he would come over and give me money and talk with me and that kind of thing. And my dad was a entrepreneur, and he owned a refrigeration business that actually 3 of my brothers went into. He also repaired televisions, and so he was always an entrepreneur. And so that was kind of an influence for me for a distance. But even though I was saying when I was younger, I like to get into things and tear up things and that kind of things, but I did not like getting dirty. And so we're going into basements to fix refrigeration stuff and heating units. That didn't appeal to me. But, the entrepreneurial side did appeal to me.
Got you. Now, I just have to ask because I'm curious. What was it like growing up with 7 other siblings?
Well, 4 older brothers, that's the main thing that I recall mostly because I would get pushed around a lot of times, beat up a little bit, making sure that I was tough and that kind of thing. But also, my brothers were, all of them are just, spectacular in my mind. Good influence. I had my oldest brother did 2 tours in Vietnam, and I always looked up to him and honored him, and that aspect of it too. That unfortunately, a lot of things that happened with Vietnam, are unfortunate about our country rather. But I always looked up to him because of what he did, sacrificing for our country, but also for our family as well. And then my next oldest brother, as Donald, as he went to college, he was that positive influence in that way because I wasn't even thinking about college, and he helped me in those kind of ways. And my other brothers, stood out. And then my oldest sister, real sweet, and then my younger 2 sisters, I just tried to not be too much of a bad influence for them, as I was not the greatest kid, as far as getting into things, exploring and all that kind of stuff, when I was younger.
Sounds like you were just a little bit mischievous.
Yeah, I think that's what you would call it. And so it's kind of the opposite of, I guess, what I am today. I'm more, mild-mannered. I'm more strategic and measured with everything and that kind of thing. And I was just into the moment when I was younger, just kind of, getting involved in a lot of stuff. And
how did those younger years shape the older years?
I think the younger years helped me because basically, like I said, I did have some good influences in church and that kind of thing. And then also my uncle that I talked about, he's an entrepreneur. He owned, I think, maybe 6 hardware stores within Cleveland. But that also shaped me because he was a pastor at the same time. And so he was that positive influence as far as a pastor, but he was also a positive influence as a entrepreneur in that regard. But also looking at his life, he gave and gave to so many people, and he never really took vacations and that kind of thing until maybe like he was 50 something years old. He went to Hawaii, and he was like late 50s or whatever. And then shortly after that, he had a stroke. And one of the things that I looked at was that, wow, he gave so much and he did so much. And, but a lot of things he missed out on as far as like, relaxing and enjoying in that kind of way. And so I was determined to try to do both. And so actually when my wife Greta and I first got married, in '86, there shortly after, we went to Hawaii as a couple, and we've been to Hawaii 29 times, and we've gone all over the place, U.S. We just went to Paris this year, and so even though I work hard, very hard, I try to play very hard as well, and so. So that's probably a response to what I saw as far as like the good, but also observing, the missed out parts of life. And so even though it's good to think about the future and that kind of thing, you have to think about opportunities to at least live in the moment and, seize the day, so to speak.
Yeah. So living in Cleveland, did you graduate high school in Cleveland?
Yes, yes. I graduated from John Hay High School and then transitioned into college in Michigan. And it was interesting too. We had a lot of athletes in our high school. Charles Oakley from New York Knicks, he was in high school with us, and we had a lot of you know people real prominent in that regard. And but one of the things I did too was, speaking of high school, that's when my eyes was open, because I actually was working in high school. I worked at University Hospital, and so I would take patients to X-ray and that kind of thing. And so I was always a hustler, always making money. And when I was in high school, that's where my focus was. I wanted to stay in radiology, taking patients, and I forget even what, oh, it's called an X-ray attendant is what I was. And I was okay with that. But my older brother, when I was in high school, he talked about Cleveland scholarship programs and had helped him get a scholarship to go to college. And so then at that point, I went and checked out Cleveland scholarship programs, and they influenced me to talk to me about colleges and opportunities. But I didn't even know that it was more money going out of state. I went out of state, and that kind of thing. And so I really kind of stumbled along, and really was blessed with a lot of different opportunities, and just really worked hard and tried to focus.
Wow. Wow. Now, going to Michigan, I've got to ask this question before you left Michigan, even in Cleveland. As a young man, when did you realize that you weren't just a young man, but a Black young man? And what did that mean?
Well, since you mentioned Michigan, I can tell you this story because it was very interesting. Because um, even though you do educational achievement and you, like I said, try to be the best person that you can, and and I'm always helping people, and have been that way since I was in high school. Um, I noticed a lot of differences. And when I graduated from college, I had 2 degrees. My first college degrees, I had 2 college degrees, and I since got another one. But right after I graduated, I wanted to stay in Michigan. And so I was actually in Detroit, and with some college friends, and looking for a job. And honestly, it was very tough, because I mean, I looked like this. I had like some suits and things like this, where I worked really hard, those hustling jobs that I had to get. And I can tell you about some of those other jobs too, because they're interesting growing up. But um, but I actually had holes in my shoes because I had cardboard in there. And so I looked the part, but it was just me with my determination. But the bottom line of what I was talking about was, I was going on a lot of interviews in Detroit area, and I went to Bloomfield Hills. There were some prominent ad agencies in Bloomfield Hills, and one of my degrees is in advertising. I had have a bachelor's degree in advertising, so that was my main degree at that particular time. And so I had an interview in Bloomfield Hills, and I was dressed similarly to this, professionally. I had a portfolio, walking, and I had to catch the bus because I didn't have transportation. And as I got into Bloomfield Hills and go on my way to the interview, the cops pull up, have me get in the back of the car. And they were asking me all kinds of questions, and still driving and looking through my work and this kind of thing, and why are you here, this kind of thing. And they made me miss my interview, basically. And so I didn't even have an opportunity to get the job. And so it was basically, I was just profiled because I was walking on an interview, and looked like I didn't belong in their estimation. And so that was a real awakening. And then also in college, I had a few times, where people were aggressive, I'll say it that way, toward me, with name calling and things like that. Beer bottles thrown at me from the back of pickup trucks, and stuff like that, as I was even on my way to class. And so those are some things that made me realize differences that weren't so good. I have good stories as well. And so, I think there's always a balance to that, because that's what I love about things, is that even though, even as we talk about police officers and, people focus on police officers in general, a lot of times people don't think about, that there are a contingent of bad police officers. And if you allow them to be rogue and don't say anything, then, it kind of reflects on all police officers, because people get nervous and there's a stigma and that kind of thing. And so, and, and so for me, I kind of look at it in my situation that, I just happened to face some that weren't so good, even though there are a lot of good ones. And then in the same way, in the differences between races and that kind of thing, I have a lot of, super positive stories, as well as the negative ones too. So want to just unless you had a follow-up question, I can transition into a positive one, but I don't
No,
know.
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So a positive story for me was when I was in the projects of Cleveland. They had a thing called Friendly Town. And that's where white people would take Black kids into their home for a week. And I went to Friendly Town a couple of times. And so that was a really nice thing for me, because a family one family in Ohio and then one family in Pennsylvania took me in for a week, and took me to church and everything they did and that kind of thing. And that was real positive, for me, because even though, throughout life I've had noticed like differences and discrimination and things like that, people who were making positive inroads, made a positive impact on my life, and also gave me the balance to help me realize, that there's good, there's bad, and there's always a mix. And so we have to always be aware of that. And in the same way, we had this Cleveland City Mission, and we had Reverend Banfield, who was a white pastor, who would come into the projects with a bus, pick us up and take us into downtown Cleveland. And we would, it was a spiritual thing. And so we had scriptures and things like that, but we had food, we had basketball, we had fun things, we had camp in the summer, that kind of thing. And so, but it was a positive influence in my life. And so I've had like a mixture of both, but somehow, again, those negative things, just like in anyone's life, they impact you profoundly. And to this day, it impacts me. The negatives one impacts me as well. So.
What's some of the impacts that you get? Well, before I even say that, let me say this, or ask you this. The story you told about going to the ad agency for the interview, I want to be clear. You were dressed in a suit. You had a portfolio. You look like you were going for a job. You just didn't wake up in the morning, roll over, and get on the bus and say, "Let me go check this out."
Right. I was very professionally dressed and, on the top of my game as best I could be. Had a professional portfolio in hand, and the cops just pulled over and basically, said, what are you doing? Why are you here? This kind of stuff we hear now, just inroad to kind of harass and take it to the next level. And then, they put me in the car and took me, like I said, away from my interview. And then I was late for the interview. Of course, I didn't get the job, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, it's life, what we sometimes have to deal with as people of color. And, these kind of stories, I think, because of what's going on now, sometimes these stories come out, that kind of thing. These are things that I rarely talk about. As a matter of fact, I was kind of forced to talk about it in the spring because I happen to have a white male student who is awesome. And actually that student is going to be my graduate assistant this fall. So he's an excellent student, and he's looking at me as his mentor, and he wants to follow in my footsteps and that kind of thing. But he happened to tell me that, in the introduction of the class, everybody was saying where they were from. And he happened to say he's from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. And I kind of went, whoa. I said, oh, wow, really? I said, I've been there before. And I was just going to leave it alone, kind of move on. And he was just like, oh, how was your experience? And I was just like, oh, no, you had to ask. And in front of the whole class. And so I just said, honestly, it was not a good experience. And, I was profiled there, after I graduated from college and went through that. And so, but he understood and, that kind of thing. And he was really kind of embarrassed for his city, that kind of thing. I was just like, this was a long time ago. And it was just something that happens. And, I'm okay, that kind of thing. But he's an awesome student. But again, by him, saying that he was from that particular city, it kind of, pushed that narrative. Pushed that story out.
Yeah, it brought something back up. So that leads me to the other question that I wanted to ask is you talked about there's negative and positive impacts. And I hear you when you say that other ethnicities, just because it's a person of another ethnicity doesn't mean it's always a negative encounter. It could be a positive encounter, and you've had both, particularly with Caucasians. Can you elaborate or help us to understand or help the viewers to understand when you talk about, for instance, that moment when he said Bloomfield, Michigan, what was that feeling? Was there a feeling that came back? Was there something that came back in your mind? Did the incident come back? What were those negative and positive impacts that you feel as you continue to go throughout life?
Yeah, it kind of triggers a little bit of anxiety because anytime, I don't care if you're in domestic violence or whatever in your life, some type of abuse or anything or something that happened to you, there are triggers that happen. And for me, that was kind of a trigger, because it was not a good situation. Just like, for instance, if we hear a song from the past and we'd had a positive experience, it triggers like endorphins and we're like positive. In the same way, when we have negative encounters, we sometimes, get a little bit, frustrated and that kind of thing. And so that was a little bit tough. And then sometimes telling my story, stories, sometimes I can even like get a little bit emotional and take me to places that haven't been in a long time. It's just like, wow, where did that come from? But sometimes it's things bottled up because, you have to, as a person of color, walk a certain line, do things by default, stay within a box, that kind of thing. And sometimes, things will trigger those things that you kind of bottled up and you just been kind of strong with. This reminds me of even my first negative situation at my newspaper. I worked in media for years. I worked in advertising, and I worked at the largest newspaper in Cleveland and had a prominent job as an editorial artist, and was in my early 20s, and I had a boss who, had obvious biases, and I'll just put it that way. And you would think that when it comes to competition, I did artwork, I did pages, those kind of things, and we were able to enter those into competition to get judged. And so I was just like, wow, this is an opportunity for me to not be judged, like for me thinking almost like for the first time where I know that I won't be judged by the color of my skin or my name, because when they look at pieces on a table, they don't know who created it or whatever, they just judge it. And so I was just really super excited because this was going to be an opportunity for my work to be judged without color being an issue at all. And so what happened was, they had like a gate almost where the boss basically said, these are the things that we're entering in. And they didn't have anything in mind. And I'm just like, wow, he didn't even want to enter anything in mind. And so what I did was I looked up the information, and I forget what it cost per entry. And I said, well, if the newspaper won't pay for it, I'll pay for it on my own. So I sent in the entry. I won my first award. I won second place in the state for illustration. I mean, I was so excited. And he found out. He wasn't happy. He was furious. he called a meeting in our department and he said, no one ever submit anything on their own. You would think that he would be excited about me winning or the paper winning, that kind of thing. And instead, it was just like a positive was turned into a negative. First of all, he tried to have a roadblock there. And then when I went another route and I won, you know, he was disappointed instead of happy for us as a publication. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And was just very, you know, frustrating in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You talk about positives and negatives and turning negatives into positives. And I want to go back a little bit to, we discussed you being a little mischievous growing up. But I can't help but wonder if it's that personality of the mischievousness, and I don't mean it in a bad way, because I think we only use the word in the negative connotation. But I think that may have been something that helped propel you to say, hey, I'm going to do this on my own because it didn't happen this way, or I'm going to find the other door.
Yeah, I think so, because when you talk about people being mischievous, usually the underlying thing is curiosity. They're curious, they're explorers. And so it's really just kind of going off the grid, you know, exploring and that kind of thing. And, you know, like me, you know, going off the path at the church picnic and falling down the hill and almost dying and that kind of thing. That was me just exploring and that kind of thing. In the same way, you know, when you talk about being mischievous, it's really like exploring, it's adventurous, it's that kind of thing. And so I think there's a lot of curiosity, adventure, and that kind of thing that, you know, helps me to explore. Even when I think about storytelling, the best ways to tell stories, to communicate and be effective and help people and, you know, make a difference. Because again, one of the things that I talk about and I've talked about for years, and it kind of drives me, my mantra is to make a difference, be the difference. And so to make a difference and being a difference, you have to be someone who goes forth and intentionally does something to be helpful or strategic or, you know, and that kind of thing. And so you go off the grid. So it's thinking outside the box, it's going outside the grid. It's, you know, those kind of things. And my life is totally driven by that.
Wow. I can't help but think that speaks to a broader sense of when we talk about the African American community inside of society, of a lot of times that's exactly what has to happen, is thinking outside of the box, having to be a little bit more curious, not just taking that first no as a no, and being able to explore and be a little bit more adventurous to get to where to get to whatever your purpose is or where you desire to go, very similar to what you did at this newspaper.
Yeah, because you have to have options on the table. You have to have goals, but with goals, you know, you have to have, you know, different points on the agenda that you strategically go after, and you can't be discouraged by one thing that may seem like a roadblock. And I think that's, you know, the main thing is really to stay focused despite the obstacles. And so, again, even my background kind of has prepared me for that, because, again, I, like other people, face a lot of different obstacles, but I'm always, you know, very positive. I see the glass as half full. There's a way, there's a will, and plus I have faith and, you know, that kind of thing. And so it's a combination of things.
Wow. Yeah. So and you know, you kind of glossed over this a little bit, and I'm coming back to it because I have to know.
Keep coming.
You talked about in your 20s traveling, not just singing, but traveling on the road, singing. Tell us a little bit about that, and how'd you get into that?
Okay, so actually in college I started singing more, and actually won first place in a talent show, AKA talent show, for singing One in a Million, because my voice when I would sing was very low register and that kind of thing. And so I started the Ferris State Gospel Choir. I was the, you know, founder of that. And so I was really into, you know, singing. And then after I graduated and got into the industry, I was squarely focused on, you know, being art director or whatever position that I had. or business owner, because I juggled some of those things. But there came a point where someone approached me and said, "We want you to sing, and we heard you singing in the choir at your church." And as a matter of fact, Greta and I met in choir. We heard you singing in the choir in your church, and we would like you to sing in our group. And it was a group of 4 guys who did real tight harmonic sounds with steps like the Temptations. And so some people called us the Temptations of Gospel. And so we had a pretty large following. We would sing all over the city, the state. In '96, we traveled to Paris and sang there for 3 weeks, and did some amazing things there. And so that's kind of a little bit of the story. Did a couple of albums, and I also talked within some of the songs, so it's kind of interesting in that regard as well.
Okay. All right. So is this group still together?
No, this group disbanded in 1997. So this was before YouTube and all this kind of stuff. And so,
So what you're saying is we can't find any of this stuff anywhere.
No, not unless I post. Not unless I post. And I haven't done that yet. As a matter of fact, I took some things from VHS last summer. And so who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Wonderful. I just couldn't let that go. I was like, oh no, we're not glossing over this piece right here. We've got to find out more about this. So now tell me about your journey to your profession where you are now.
Okay, so my journey to my profession was, first of all, I think one of the ways that my father was instrumental in my life, even though, we were no longer a 2-parent household at the time. My father noticed that I could draw. And so my father bought me a paint set, and then I started doing oil paintings like at age 16, and I became very good at it. And so that kind of paved the way and kind of, encouraged my interests and that kind of thing. And then what I did was, when I went to college, I talked about me getting an advertising degree. I got a commercial art degree as well. And then later on, I got a master's degree. But I was squarely focused with advertising, and I spent several years in advertising before I went into media. And then I went, like I said, from media, from advertising into the largest newspaper in Ohio. And then I wound up, because of that boss that I talked about, I entertained other things. Because let me talk about this before I go take you to on the journey here a little bit further. Another thing that I encountered with that particular boss was I was always pretty curious, as we talked about before. And so when the Macintosh came out in 1984, I was at the newspaper in 1988. And so in 1988, when the Macintosh came out, I was curious about how to tell stories and how to do things, create on that particular computer, whereas other people were not. And so I gravitated to that, and I wound up being very good at it very quickly. And I got noticed by the Poynter Institute, which is a prominent institute in St. Petersburg, Florida, that teaches professionals. And so they asked me to be a teacher for them, as a visiting faculty member. And so I was maybe 25, 26 years old. And so, but when I talked to my boss about it, I said, I've been asked to do this, and this was very prestigious. He looked at me and he said, "They asked you, why did they ask you?" And he turned around and he walked away. And so that was another time that I faced bias for that from that particular person. So the environment for me at that particular paper was driven by him because he was my direct boss. And so that allowed me to look other places. And because I was becoming prominent at Poynter Institute, I had opportunities at Newsweek magazine, Orange County Register, all kinds of places, prominent places around the US was calling and and asking if I wanted to work there. However, I was grounded in Ohio, never wanted to leave Ohio, loved Ohio, that kind of thing. And then also my family was young, and I was very cognizant of the fact that, I cared about my family and didn't want to disrupt, the kids and that kind of thing. And so and sometimes it was timing, maybe I was in the singing group, that kind of thing, and, those kind of things. And so basically, I did not go, but I wound up going to the Akron Beacon Journal because they had already won a few Pulitzer Prizes. And I was fortunate enough too, when I was there, I was on a team that won one as well. And so, but that attracted me to the Akron Beacon Journal originally before I got a chance to work on particular opportunities. But I worked my way up from assistant art director to art director. And when I left the industry in 2001 to go teach full-time at Ohio University, I was assistant managing editor in charge of leading about 50 people in the newsroom, various departments. And so that kind of led me into to teaching. I also taught part-time at Kent State University while I was teaching, while I was working in Akron. And I also owned a business, a creative design studio in Maple Heights, Ohio, while I was juggling being art director, singing on the road. So I've always been juggling a lot as well. So that kind of gives you a little bit of that background.
Yeah. And so when you went into teaching, were you teaching English, psychology? What were you teaching at the university?
So actually, it's very interesting because when I was assistant managing editor at the Akron Beacon Journal, I was very happy in my job. I had a great boss, Stuart Warner. At the time, he wound up leaving, but and then I had another good boss, Tom Flatting. And so I was very happy with my situation and helping people and that kind of thing and telling stories. But I did a thing. I actually had someone come who I knew from the Poynter Institute come and do a training at our newspaper because I had ties with the Poynter Institute. And then that particular person got to see me on that particular level, what I was doing in the newsroom. And what they did was they knew about the opening at Ohio University, and they gave my name to Ohio University. And so I got a call from Ohio University asking me to come teach informational graphics and page design and stuff like that, graphic design. And I was not interested. I laughed. I came home and I told Greta, I'm just like, Ohio University called me, I'm good, I'm good. And she just like started asking me questions. It's like, you always love teaching, at Poynter, at, Kent State. And I'm just like, you're right. Maybe I should just go check it out, So I went actually just to check it out, wasn't really interested, but Greta did bring up some points because it kind of was at my core to teach, to nurture, that kind of thing. So I wound up at Ohio University, teaching, and I taught there for about 9 years, got tenure there, and then I came to UNC in a similar manner, was recruited to come here to UNC to teach.
Wow. Now you talked about having a family, and we know you met Greta in choir, being in the choir. How long have you been married? How many kids?
We've been married since '86, and we have 4 kids, and we have, actually a kid who lives in Durham, who lives close by, who's a manager. We have a kid who lives in China, who does motion graphics, following in my footsteps. We have a kid who lives in Ohio, who's a producer. He produces music and audio, those kind of things. And we also have a kid who lives in Hawaii, and she's an administrator now.
Wow. Any grandchildren?
Yeah, we have 4 grandkids. 2 who are in Hawaii now, and 2 that are in Durham.
Wow. So when you think about raising your kids and providing for your family, what were your greatest fears? Because they're all older now, right? They're all adults with their own lives and kind of doing their own things. What were your greatest hope and your greatest fears for them?
My greatest hope was that my kids would be contributors to the world, to find their purpose, and be people who are motivators, encouragers, making difference in other people's lives, and they're all doing that. Um, and 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 I guess my greatest fear was those outside factors of what we talked about before, where people will go out of their way to stifle your potential or block you and that kind of thing. But on the flip side, that with the mindset and the faith and everything, that they will be able to overcome those obstacles and be okay. And
Mhm.
um, so that's probably about it.
Wow. When you look at today, when you look at our society today and all the things that we're going through,
Mhm.
in your mind, what do you say that we as a whole society, what do we need to do?
Um, as a whole society, I think not be arrogant, not be selfish, those kind of things. Because again, uh, there's a quote on the wall in our school that says, "Good is the enemy of great." And a lot of times, people settle, and so and they're settling for average versus even good. You know, like I'm okay, this kind of thing. And so, and in a lot of ways too, again, when you think about not being selfish, not being arrogant, it's really about even like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them to do to you. And a lot of people lack empathy because they're in some way insulated or selfish. And the thing is, I believe a lot of people don't even see it. They don't even recognize that. You know, you have to be intentional. If you look at my posts, it's not they're not perfect, but I try to intentionally help people, motivate people, not share things that are going to bring people down, drag people down, promote theories and conspiracy theories and those kind of things. But how can you uplift? How can you make a difference? And so if everybody was really focused to try to make a difference, I think that would be good. Again, you know, my saying is to make a difference, be the difference. And one of the things I also look at too is the greatest use of your life is to so live your life that the use of your life will outlive your life. And so really creating a legacy where you're doing something that after you're long gone, there's positive ramifications, positive things. We live in a community called The Legacy. And so I'm reminded of that every day as I come through the gate, like the legacy. And so again, as you think about that, everybody should be trying to have a legacy where they're helping people, they're making a difference, they're not judging people. You know, if you're judging people, how about being the person who's going to lend a hand to lift somebody up? How can you strategically use your advantage to help people? How about trying to be what our pastor calls dope on your level? Be boss on your level, be real on your level, take care of this things that are in your purview and in your sphere that you can do, that you can influence. We can't help everybody, we can't do everything, but there's a lot of people that God has placed us in a position where we're able to help others. And so I think, again, I'm saying a lot to answer this question, but I think that's what it is really to figure out how can you give other people hope? How can you make a difference, you know, in other people's lives? Because again, a lot of people are without hope, and sometimes we're that instrument to provide hope to them. And someone wisely said, you can live 40 days without food, 5 days without water, 5 minutes without air, but you can't live 1 second without hope. And so we could be agents of change, help people to have hope, build people up, lift people up. Then I think the world will be different. You know, not always trying to be defensive, not always trying to, you know, not listen to others. But again, having that empathy. I shared the definition for empathy on my feed, you know, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And because I think, again, all of us need to be thinking about empathy. How can we care for others? I'm not a woman, but I can think about things that I can do to help a woman, right? Again, even though I have a mom, I have sisters, I can identify in some kind of ways because, you know, that kind of thing. But again, just because you're not a particular, you know, thing or whatever in a particular box doesn't mean that you can't think and help and try to have empathy for others, try to understand what they're going through.
Wow. Yeah. So that leads me to this question. At the end of the day, what's your mark or legacy on the world?
When I was at that newspaper, when I was going through the things I was going through, there's a story that they wrote about me, and 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 it was based on an old song, and basically the quote that they used from me was, uh, it was now I'm trying to get it right, that, you know, don't want to live your life in vain. And I'm not quoting, I'm kind of paraphrasing now,
Okay.
because I'm kind of thinking indirectly, but it's about not living your life in vain, you know, making a difference in other people's lives. And I'm trying to think of the direct quote because for some reason the direct quote is escaping me.
Wow. Not living your life in vain.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I can touch somebody as I pass along, then my living will not be in vain. That's it. So you helped trigger it for me.
Okay.
So again, if I can touch somebody as I pass along, then my living will not be in vain. Because again, we're all on this journey. We don't know how long, we don't know how short. Life is like a vapor. And so I try to do what T.D. Jakes' book says, maximize the moment. You know, we're all in a situation where, you know, people look at a tombstone and they look at the beginning date and look at the end date, but the most important thing is that dash. And so what are you doing in that dash? And so that way, my living is not in vain. I'm making a difference. I'm intentional. I'm going to, you know, do things in that particular manner. So it's like a mindset.
What would you say if you're standing in a mirror and young Terrence Oliver was in that mirror? What would you say to young Terrence Oliver being where you are today?
That's interesting. I would probably say, go ahead and be yourself. Really listen to people who have wisdom, because always think about, you know, even if you're helping people, that there's somebody who can be a mentor to you. Identify who those mentors are and take full advantage of those, because they help you be a better mentor and they help you grow. They help you find your purpose and stay in your purpose and to make impact, not just be a wandering generality. You know, they help you be a meaningful specific, you know. And so that's probably one of the best pieces of advice that I would give, because again, you know, we all have opportunities to explore things on our own, but a lot of times you don't have to go through the school of hard knocks. You can learn things from observation. And so I don't have to be a fool, because I can observe fools on Facebook all day long, right? And so that's kind of a philosophy, is if you observe things, you don't have to follow in those particular traps. You don't have to even stumble and explore those areas, because again, you see it displayed. In the same way, you see you see good ideas, you see innovative things going on, you see energy, you see, you know, power, you see those kind of things that maybe can make a difference. Observe those, be measured in what you do, and then you could, you know, grow from there. And so it's really about growth. And so observing things, being able to see, you know, because again, if you kind of buzz through life, sometimes you can miss things. And so that's what it is for me. I think just telling myself to be focused, and the things that I try to do now, be strategic, measured.
When you look back over your life, what are the things that you're most proud of?
Most proud of, probably um, being able to help people. I mean, I've been able to help thousands of students now, because I've been doing this. Next year, it'll be 20 years that I've been teaching pretty much full time. I'm never full time at one thing. As you know, I have businesses, but being able to make a difference in other people's lives, and and not like try to get up on a pedestal with it, but be humble about it, and just have an open heart to help others, and be a conduit for positivity and faith and strength and those kind of things, and be able to see, observe when other people are hurting. And so in that way, being my direct influence with my family, to be able to see that in my kids now, and see the legacy that is there, and see how they're impacting the next generation, that kind of thing. And so when I look at things to be proud of, they have to do with generational kind of things that are going to be, long term in some way or another.
Wow. As a Black man, I have to ask you this question. What are the success keys to a long marriage?
Yeah, so Greta and I have been together since 85, married in 86. And I think that one of the things is that we listen to each other. We also invest in each other. And so, and like I talked about us going to Hawaii 29 times, we were supposed to be there August 1st, supposed to be our 30th time. We had to cancel all of that stuff, even though Hawaii was open back up, but then they closed back up, well, they didn't allow, they had an opening date, but then they closed that date again. So, but we were going to do that. But what I'm talking about there is that when we were married just maybe a couple of years, we talked about investing in each other. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we knew that with all kids and all this kind of stuff, that it was going to take away from the closeness that we had, because you're distracted, you're doing other things, that kind of thing, you don't have as much time. And so, what we did was we determined to take a vacation once a year that would be a couple only, and invest in each other. And so we didn't have the money for it, but we figured it out, and we just put it into what we do. And so, like I said, even though we've been to Hawaii so many times, we've been to Ferris, Aruba, all kinds of places. I can't even start to mention those. But again, as a couple. And so when we're as a couple, we would be in the kayak together, on a horse, snorkeling together, doing a lot of things together. So when I talked about intentional before, being intentional in your marriage, investing in each other. It's just like a business. If you have, I'm not saying a marriage is a business, but if you have a business and you have a partner, you have to be mindful of each other. You have to invest into each other. You have to be thinking about, those kind of things. And so to this day, that's what we've been doing to try to be mindful of each other. We walk every day now, this pandemic, we go out into the pit, light a fire, just sit down and talk. And so and so doing things that are kind of off the grid, like we talked about before, they're planting like little painted rocks within our neighborhood. And so we've been discovering them together, walking through the woods, doing those kind of things. And so some things that are kind of mindless. We have 2 hammocks in the back. And so I said, I'm going to go read. You want to go read? And so we're just in the hammocks together, being of the same mindset where we're both growing. She's reading whatever she's reading. I'm reading about leveraging stuff, with quid pro quo and stuff like that about business, and she's doing other stuff. But again, we're on the same page. And so I think trying to be on the same page and those kind of things are important in marriage and relationships. And so really investing into each other and being intentional, I think, are probably foundational.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Simple things, simple
Yeah.
techniques that you can do, right? If you just apply them. And you're intentional. I like that word you use, intentional, being intentional about your life, being intentional about your partner, being intentional about how you give and how you receive and different things of that nature.
It's kind of funny because as you say that, it made me think about, when we have conflicts, everybody have conflict.
Yeah.
I don't know when in our marriage we started to say the other person would be like, I'm your buddy, I'm your friend, and we would just start laughing because again, we all get agitated and whatever, we get in a space that, I don't even want to see you right now, this kind of thing. And then it's just like, the other person's just like, it's me, I'm your buddy, this kind of thing. And so sometimes even making light of a situation and that kind of thing, and knowing and reminding each other that I'm for you, we're for each other, me, that kind of thing. I think
Right.
that would be helpful too in a relationship.
Oh, wow. We're in this together. I'm not your enemy.
Right.
I'm not your enemy. I like that. I might have to steal that.
Yes. Go with that.
I absolutely like that. I love it. I love it. Well, we're coming close to the end here. Got a few more questions for you. One of the things as you look at becoming a father and being married as long as you have, what were thoughts that you had going into developing a family that has helped you sustain everything, just you personally?
Things that I did with my family that helped me personally.
Just getting ready to get married,
Yeah.
having kids. What were things that as a husband or as a man that in this relationship, what were things for you that you constantly talked to yourself about or reminded yourself about?
It all revolves around responsibility. And so for me, knowing that I have kids, first of all, knowing that I had a wife took it to another level. So I have to be responsible. It's not just me, single, whatever, I do whatever I want to do kind of thing. I'm responsible here. I'm responsible. I want to be a person who's going to lead, somebody who's going to be encouraged, somebody who's going to motivate, somebody who's going to uplift, that kind of thing. And so with that becomes a responsibility that you have to carry yourself. That's the word I was looking for. Carry yourself in a certain way, be strategic in a certain way, and that kind of thing. And so in the same way with kids, there's a huge responsibility. So you have to watch what you say, what you do. You're constantly modeling 24/7, those kind of things. And so you have to be intentional as far as like trying to invest in their lives and be there for them, listen, those kind of things. Because again, we're all kind of, especially when we're juggling, we all can be distracted and we can be like we're listening and not listening and those kind of things, especially nowadays. And so really trying to find that way where you can cut through the noise and really hear kids, hear your wife or spouse or whatever. And so it's really about, to me, it was about responsibility. And so with that responsibility and purpose, that drives me to make a difference in business, make a difference in what I do and what I say and how I carry myself and how I respond. Maybe I want to respond in a certain way to somebody, but that wouldn't be prudent to, me as a father, as a representative, as, a nurturer, as a husband. And so I need to refrain, even though I have the power and ability to do something, doesn't mean that I have to do it. And so really, that is, being able to control power, I think is more important than the power itself. and so I think that's most important. And we have to realize that you have power in a relationship, you have power as a parent, you have power as a mentor, you have power as a teacher, as a professor, whatever. And so really thinking about how do you wield that power and do it responsibly. And so being responsible, I think, is central.
I think that goes to a broader conversation on society when you talk about how do we wield that power.
Yeah, right. Right, and so right, and the crazy thing is that you see good examples, you see bad examples, and then you also see people who are influenced, who were good examples, and they're influenced by bad examples, and they drop their integrity. And that's another thing, integrity. Integrity is that consistency. What I am, in this basement is what I am outside. What I am behind closed doors is what I am outside. And so you're going to see consistency. What I am in the classroom, you're going to see. What I am in church, you're going to see in the classroom. You're going to see consistency. And so integrity, not sacrificing your integrity because you're influenced in a negative way by someone, or you're challenged by someone, or someone, provokes you. And so we're all provoked at times. And so you have to kind of say, okay, this is going to go against my integrity. And, and so I'm going to stay steadfast, even if I'm the only one. And so not being afraid to be the only one. I don't care. So, I have that kind of mindset as I lean to the side here with a little argument. I guess, again, that's part of it, part of maintaining your integrity. You have to be, you have to stand strong. And so if you don't stand strong, or you start compromising that, then compromise leads to bigger compromises. And then next thing you know, you don't even know who you are. So, and if somebody else can label you or whatever, you don't even know who you are. And so, and by you accepting something that someone has labeled you or someone is dictating to you, that's telling you're telling yourself that I don't even know who I am. Right. And so I think that's responsibility, is really, maintaining your integrity, staying firm, looking at goals, plans, priorities, those kind of things, and going for it.
Wow. So I have enjoyed this time. I've got some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Uh-oh, yeah, okay, let's go.
They're not too hard. I promise.
All right.
Favorite food?
Probably lasagna. We got that last night at the Governor's Village here in Chapel Hill, and I hadn't had that in a really long time. So probably lasagna.
Favorite movie?
Gladiator.
Why Gladiator?
Gladiator, because Gladiator has a lot of things that I talked about, where you see a person who's gone through obstacles, but they're incredibly focused. They're incredibly, passionate about their family. They're a fighter, but they're not just, laying back, but they're training, they're, being disciplined, they're being strategic, those kind of things. And so, as a matter of fact, if you look way back there, you'll see on the wall, that's the Gladiator. So reminders of that. And then also, I had the opportunity to go to Italy and visit the Roman Colosseum and just look at the ruins and that kind of thing. Even though this is a movie, it reminded me of people who are disenfranchised, who had obstacles, who were forced into slavery, forced into things, and having animals attack them and this kind of thing, forced into like things for entertainment. And so there's a lot of threads that I could see within that movie about being at a disadvantage, being disenfranchised, but then leveraging what you have and what you can do to make a difference, and all the way to the end, to the battle with the king, and still, getting into those times too, where you feel like maybe you want to give up, or there's the end, and it's like, not now, not now, not now, not now. And so that was repeated throughout that particular movie. Not yet. That's what he said. Not yet. Not yet. He was like looking at his family, thinking about who his family was killed, that kind of thing. In the same way, we have a purpose. There's a plan. There's a destiny at stake here. And so sometimes it's like, not now. I'm not going to give up this fight now. Yeah, I was born in Jim Crow, but I'm not giving up this fight now. Yeah, I've faced plenty of obstacles, but I'm not giving up this fight now. Yeah, I've faced obstacles with getting tenure twice at 2 different universities, but I'm not giving up now. And I've faced all kinds of obstacles, but I'm not giving up. And so I love that about that particular movie. That was a long answer to that. Sure.
No, that was all right. It was okay. It's from your heart. Favorite ice cream?
Butter pecan.
Butter pecan. Favorite song?
Wow, that's a hard one because, I have spiritual songs, I have other ones, but probably the favorite song for me, is a song that I share with my wife. We both share Always and Forever, because again, that's the song you talk about, your foundation, what you start off with in a relationship. We both gravitated to that song. And so that song is a reminder that what the mindset that we had from the beginning, always and forever, and so that means that no matter what, we're sticking together, we're going forward, we got this kind of thing. And so that song helps keep us grounded.
Wow. Wow. Favorite hobby?
That kind of vacillates depending on, how bored I get or whatever. But now I'm venturing I do motion graphics, and I think, and actually I was fortunate enough to be able to start the first motion graphics teaching in a journalism school in the US. And so thinking outside the box in that kind of way was interesting to me. But I've been teaching motion graphics for over a decade now. And so that is kind of not necessarily getting boring to me, because I do that as a job as well. But I like to keep it interesting. And so now I'm incorporating VR. If you look at that unit on that table back there, that's VR. So putting things in a 360-degree space. So I have 360-degree cameras. I'm doing animations that are in a 3D environment so that you can put a head unit on it, and you're in the graphics, you're in the storytelling and that kind of thing. And so that's my favorite hobby, is storytelling in that kind of way, but progressively, looking at things in an innovative way that maybe people haven't thought about before. And so right now I'm working on a project for UNC Medical School, and they will be able to go from a cartoon into a doctor's office and those kind of things. And so it's very interesting in that kind of way. So those kind of things keep me interested in the hobby.
And VR stands for?
Virtual reality.
Okay, just for our viewers. So
virtual reality, you put a head unit on and you become in that space. If I put a head unit on, if I go and record my backyard, you put the head unit on, it's like you're in my backyard. You can hear the birds chirping, you can look all around, you can look at the sky, you can look down, those kind of things. And so in the same way, virtual reality can be done in animation and also with footage. And I'm actually, for the medical school, I'm combining both footage and animation.
Wow. Favorite destination or vacation spot?
Well, you kind of got a glimpse of that. We've been to Kauai, Hawaii 29 times, and so we love it there. However, we're venturing out to do more Europe stuff, like we were in Paris before it shut down. We just made it back in the middle of March, when our last day was the last day that anybody could even be there. And so our timing was like perfect. And so that was the first time I had been back to Paris since I was singing. And that was my wife's first time going, because she didn't go with us when we were on the road singing. So.
So you left her home. I see.
Right.
Okay, that's a whole nother story. We won't talk about that now. We're gonna leave that right there. Just know that I heard that. So thank you for participating in our kind of quick fire round robin. I truly believe that if we meet each other at the human level first and find commonalities, that it's so much easier to get to know each other than just looking at what's on the outside that may be differences that puts obstacles in our ways to get to know each other. And so often no one talks about those types of things, right? What I like to eat, or where do I go, and things that I do that could quickly bond two people together. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing those things with us.
You're welcome. Yeah, we have more in common than we don't. And so, if people can remember that and identify with things and really try to look at the heart of people who try to make a difference, I think, and don't get discouraged. I think that's the best formula for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I have to ask you this question.
Okay.
Well, it's not a question. We're at the end.
Okay.
It's me giving you the floor to say anything that's on your heart and your mind that you may not have been seen or heard for, that you never thought about being heard for, never had a chance to be heard for, whether it's to a person, a community, the world. The floor is yours to leave whatever you want to leave with them.
Okay, that's kind of wide open there, but um, I and I hadn't thought about that, of course, because you just kind of shot that one out there. But uh, I think again, sort of like what we were been talking about, those things, those common threads that tie us all together. There are people who are out there who want to separate us as people, us as genders, and all this kind of stuff. And there's always going to be people like that. But if somehow people can really look to the light, and the thing about it is light dispels darkness. If this was nighttime and if I was to have all the lights here and I just flicked a candle right here or a lighter or something, it would illuminate everything around it. And so we can remember that we have the power to illuminate others around us. I think then we can start making those differences and not be discouraged. And so regardless of what we shared on Facebook in the past or the negative things that we said, to certain people, whatever, today it could be a new day where you just start and say, okay, going forward, I'm going to make a difference in a positive way. I'm going to try to share things that are going to make a difference. I'm going to say things that are going to make a difference, and know that those things will go long term. A lot of people will never say anything, but you'll find out that in years later that, wow, that made a difference. And then I didn't even know that it could make a difference.
Mr. Terence Oliver, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story through your lens,
No problem.
giving us your heart, your experiences, and your wisdom. This has been amazing, absolutely amazing time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone.
To our viewers, I want to say thank you for watching today. The truth is, as Terence talked about, we have more in common than we have apart. I hope that you had a chance to listen to his story through his lens. As Terence talked about his story, there may have been something inside of you that you never felt before, or never thought about before, or saw something in a different light than what you saw it in before. So the question now is, you've seen, you've heard. Now it's up to us to check our biases and to take action on those biases that come up for us. I'm CK James. This has been the Voices of a Black Man. I am so honored to be here with you today, and so honored to have had the conversations with Mr. Terence Oliver. Look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern, where we have a new guest to talk with and to learn his story through his lens. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.